The people on the left right now have made government a god. They have elevated to the position of God. All the good things will be bestowed by this government. This government is the thing that gives us equity. It gives us money. It gives us healthcare. It gives us all the human rights. It allows us to speak, and it tells us what is good and bad speech. And you look at it and you go like, okay, bro, we're having a religious discussion with people that are having a zealous position behind their religion.
Until you start teaching history and helping young people understand, I'm talking about, first, second, third graders, understand the basic foundations of a constitutional republic and basically in human nature, which our founders understood very well, and the failings of human nature. Until you start bringing that into the schools, I think Lyndon Johnson got rid of civics education at the end of his administration. Mm-hmm. That was probably the beginning of the end. I went to Catholic school through elementary school, but and even when I was in public high school, we still, said the Pledge of Allegiance. We had a moment of silence. We don't those basic things, basic understanding of human nature, of the founding principles of the country, and recognizing that even Christ himself didn't speak out against slavery. That mores and folkways change as people evolve, and just because people lived a certain way 200 years ago doesn't make them inherently evil. That was just the time that they lived in, but then go on and embrace and be proud of the evolutionary process that has occurred over the last 100 years, where black people are not considered second-class citizens or even second-class human beings, or that women shouldn't have a place at the table and be allowed an opinion. We shouldn't chastise the people that adhere to those sorts of ideas, but we should embrace and be proud that we've evolved beyond that. But for some reason, we insist on projecting 100, 200 years back our own values and principles that exist today, when in fact, to some extent, we should be proud of those values and principles and how they've evolved. So just back to basics, bring back a basic civics education, but it's going to take a long time. I read a couple of informative books back in the day, Closing of the American Mind by Bloom, I can't remember his first name, and Raising the Optimistic Child. So I saw this coming back in the 90s. And so we're talking 30 plus years down the road of destruction that has taken place. It's going to take a while to rebuild it. And we don't have to indoctrinate anybody. We just have to teach history as it happened.
Yeah. I think that the ideological bent that is being taught in schools, not just in schools, but in the schools that teach our teachers. So the teachers that when they get out into the your K through 12 and your basic education, they're already ideologically motivated. And I think
the worst thing that I remember reading is that the lowest average GPA and standardized testing scores going into colleges go into the College of Education.
Oh, God.
And these are the people that are turning around and teaching. So look, I'm a radical. Somebody the other day, they tagged me on X, and they were just like, hey man, this guy, he's a researcher into extremism. I don't want you to, I'm like, I am an extremist. I'm an extremist. Like, by any measure, I'm an extremist. I think the Constitution should be the law that we go by. Go figure. Like, that makes me crazy. I also homeschool all my kids, which is to say that I married a woman who has a master's degree, by the way. She was out there in the world doing normal things. She was earning a living. And then when she got pregnant, go figure, man. Not only did she started off as basically either agnostic or atheist, and she was baptized Catholic, and she wears a veil to church now. Mm-hmm. We go to church every Sunday and all the holy days. Yeah. So the funny thing for me is that we've kind of radicalized in a way that's more traditional, because we've looked at the landscape and said, this is not appropriate.
Well, I don't want
to have to worry about my kids and somebody else's care. Like, I'm going to care about them more.
Not only is it not appropriate, it doesn't work. Right. Regardless of whether or not you are a devout Christian or a devout religious person, because I think that it's not just specifically Christianity that works.
No, there's good people, no doubt about it. That's
the things that you're taught when you're devoutly religious. Pardon me. It teaches you to not throw your trust behind the government. It teaches you to throw your trust into your God and your family and your community, as opposed to some far-off government. So if you have people that are living their lives in what would be considered a religious way, which is something that the government doesn't want at all, because then you're not deferring to government, you're deferring to something that you consider a higher power. You end up with people that are more self-sufficient, and you end up with tighter communities and people that actually have hope in the future, as opposed to the kind of atheist. And I'm an agnostic, so it's not that I'm particularly.
We'll radicalize you later.
I've heard people say that. And
here's the funny thing about what you're saying, though. This is a religious discussion, whether anybody likes it or not. When you're talking about politics right now, I've done some like very small kind of like PragerU style, I guess, breakdowns. People on the right who are conservative that want the government to leave them alone oftentimes are people of faith.
Yep.
But if they're not,
look at the Amish.
If they're not people of faith, they are still people that have a certain moral code. And if they're honest, they know where that moral code came from. Maybe they think they're post-Christianity. Maybe they think they're post, assigning it to a specific religion. But if you were to track back, where did those virtues come from? Why do you think about the things that you do in the way that you do? It's a pretty straight line right back, and it goes back about 2,000 years. So that's good. I think that's a good thing because we share common values. Then you look at the people on the left. The people on the left right now have made government a god. They have elevated to the position of God. All the good things will be bestowed by this government. This government is the thing that gives us equity. It gives us money. It gives us healthcare. It gives us all the human rights. It allows us to speak, and it tells us what is good and bad speech. And you look at it and you go like, okay, bro, we're having a religious discussion with people that are having a zealous position behind their religion, which is leftism. And it's a secular religion. It doesn't have a true God. And then you're dealing with people on the other side that are operating in good faith from like saying like real faiths are out there. And they're both faiths. They're both real. They're in conflict with each other because one has tried to elevate man to the level of God and an institution of man to the level of God. For me, that's the no-go. That's why I'm not going to send my kids into school. And like I said, we're full radicalized. Like my baby, my 18-month-old, born in my house, has never seen a doctor, not once, born with a midwife, paid out of pocket and cash. Mm-hmm. And she's healthy and she's fine and she's great and she runs around. She's nuts, because she's a toddler. But at the end of the day, if you want to, we're dealing with these conflicting worldviews. And I think a lot of people don't really accept the terms. If you ever want to mess with somebody on the political left, which is a totally fun thing to do, but you should do it in a loving way, I think. The way that you do it is you ask questions. You do it Socratically. Okay, and obviously we should get much deeper into the terrorism and why the U.S. is dealing with this new kind of small fringe of rash that threatens us. But if you want to dismantle folks on the left, how many people have ever come to you and told you you're a piece of garbage and now you're going to change your mind?
Oh,
like exactly zero on Twitter that I've seen.
Yeah.
Right?
It's not effective.
It's not effective. Ask questions. I've radicalized people, or I've at least made them question their thoughts by asking them, where did your values come from? What do you believe is good? Oh, I want my kids to work hard. I want them to have a good job. I want them to be nice to women. I want them to see people for who they are and judge them based on their actions and their character. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, why are those good?
Yeah.
How did you know that was good? Well, I just did. Really? What kind of religion did your parents raise you with? What kind of religion did they grow up in if you didn't grow up with a religion? At the end of the day, you contract almost all Western values, and I'll call them Western values, to a Judeo-Christian position.
Yep.
And if you don't honestly recognize that, then you just make them wonder and walk around. Look, I want people to have ideas smash into their head, and I want them to have that disagreement. At some point in time, they'll wake up and go, this isn't working. And the example is, like I said, I had an agnostic/atheist wife. She got baptized. And 2 days later, the FBI took my badge and my gun. I don't think those things are accidents. I don't see them as accidents because there's been too many examples in my life recently where I'm walking down a path where I'm seeing evidence of this. Not everybody has the same examples. Mm-hmm. But man, I'll tell you what, when they start hitting you in the face over and over again, you have a moment of self-doubt and someone calls you up and says, hey, by the way, I know you're fighting with the FBI. I just found out that the assistant director is banging people on the side and we have his side piece's phone number if you want to reach out and call her. And you go like, oh, yeah, they are evil. They are doing bad stuff. Like, it's not me. I'm not the crazy person here when I'm pushing up against my own agency. And I've had constant reaffirmations of that. And I think George and I have shared some of these things together where it's like, if you don't have self-doubt about what you're doing when you're going up against big agencies or big organizations or institutions, you're a sociopath, probably. But when you have reaffirmations, it's like, no, we're right. And we're just trying to do the thing that gets us back to a status quo from, let's say, the 80s, which would have been way better.
So this, let me put it to a level where a crayon-eating jarhead can understand it. Me.
My favorite color is red.
If you don't believe that you answer to a higher power, the only guidelines, the only guardrails you're left with are laws.
Yep.
Right? So this is why one of the reasons we're in this situation we're in today is that you do what you can get away with.
Yeah.
Because there is no final accountability.
These aren't new ideas either. Nietzsche was talking about this in the late 1800s. When the people love to go ahead and quote God is dead and we have killed him, as if that is some kind of triumph. And if you know anything about Nietzsche, he knew how dramatic that was and how terrible that was going to be. Yeah. And he predicted all of the horrors of communism and Nazism, the absolute bloodbath that the 21st century was. I'm sorry for cutting you off, but
no, 100%. I mean, it's just, this is why, you started the podcast, the show like this is like, this is, how did we get to this point? And in some aspects it's complex, and in others it's actually quite simple. We've obliterated the lines.
Yep.
We've removed the guardrails, and the only accountability that is out there now is what can you get away with? Something
that I've talked about a lot, and we talk about here on this show, is the left, in my opinion, the left wants people to be, they don't want people to have hope, and they want people to despair, because happy people with hope for the future don't become revolutionaries. And so if you look at the society and you say—
also have children.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's true. But children are emblematic of hope, right? You don't have children children make people hopeful, because you can't help but hope for better things for your children, I think. And so that's something that, children are a manifestation of a hopeful society. If you're a society that has hope for the future, you're going to be having children. If you're a society that doesn't have hope for the future, you're going to have problems like the U.S. is having, where we don't have people having kids
and a declining birth rate on
absolutely.
purpose. Listen, leftism is a religion of converts, because I'm going to keep using that terminology. It makes a lot of sense. It's a religion of converts because they don't procreate, because their values are talking about. George uses the term climate paganism, which I absolutely love, and
that's completely accurate.
It is. It works within the system. It's like we have our own system of beliefs that Mother Gaia is really the end all be all. Look, I could care less about the planet. I'm going to be completely transparent about that. I do not care about the planet for its own sake, because it's irrelevant to me.
Yes.
We're meant to be good stewards of it, but not for the sake of the planet.
Yes.
It's for the sake of human beings to thrive and have, happiness. So if you want to be a person who has kids, and I have 4, and I'd like to have more, if we have time, we'll figure it out. It's like, you move your way into the world, and if you don't, then you give your kids, like, the kids are looking around. If you're not going to model that example, somebody will, and sometimes those people are Islamists, and they're going to go out there and give this simple excuse like, hey, by the way, your system is bad, it's evil, it's oppressing our system if you want to be part of it. And George and I both investigated these types of people, and you just go.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.